All right. I'm going to get it started because we've got a pretty full program. My name is Lisa Curtis. I'm the Director of Development and Community Outreach at Via Mobility Services. And we've got a full program today, really exciting things happening in the area of addressing climate change. I started to be really concerned about climate change when I had kids almost 21 years ago. We had twin boys, and I started to realize that their lives might begin to see an extreme degradation of the climate and the environment. And that got me really concerned. And that's when I really started to become alarmed by climate change. But today, I hope that this is a very hopeful session for everyone, because my understanding that is the consensus among different people who study this and are experts in the area, that we do have time to act, to make changes in the environment, but we have to act now. And I'm really pleased that we're able to talk today about some very major initiatives that are beginning, not just in our community, but in many, many places around the world. And I think this is the kind of concerted effort we're going to need. So I'm going to turn it over now to VIA's Chief Executive Officer. Let me see if I can, there we go. To Frank Bruno, and let him give us kind of an overview of what the theme is for today. Thanks, Frank.
Thank you, Lisa. And I know I've got 3 minutes, so I'll try to keep it quick, but I want to welcome everyone. I'm impressed. We've got 42 participants, and I look at the screen, I see so many colleagues, past and present, and the fact that we're all working on this together. If you're not aware, VIA is just about 41 years old and got started in the paratransit business at a time when communities were really mobilizing. And Lisa Curtis has done a great job of summarizing that in a document that perhaps she'll share at some point with everyone. It really talks about our founding and all of that. But now today, we're so much more than just our founding mission, which is a signature fabulous service. We provide municipal transit, we're providing shuttle service, micro transit, we're a contractor with RTD, we're a contractor with the city of Boulder in many ways beyond the municipal HOP transit. But the thing that I find most exciting about my time here as CEO is that we are building sustainability into the notion of transportation, and that's the big T, because we do a lot of it. And currently, about 25% of our existing buildings needs are met with the solar array on our building. It's not enough, obviously, once now that we've plugged in our Proterra buses, and I'm sure Bill will talk a little bit more about that. So we are motivated to keep making change here, to be a company that powers our vehicles with renewable energy, and that we are a stable, sound, sustainable financially, sustainably environmentally, and that we're here for the long haul. We pride ourselves on being very nimble and able to turn on a dime for a community's needs or a provider's needs and work with us. And we're excited about that. And this is a big part of that. We really need to change and continue to make the changes Lisa was alluding to. And today is a big start in that direction. We're wrapping up the strategic plan here in a month or so, and that'll tie in with our sustainability goals and a significant capital campaign that'll kick off for technology and innovation. So very exciting time for us, and we're thrilled to have all of you, because we know it's going to really require our working together. And as a community nonprofit, we're able to do that with you and able to be that nimble organization. So thank you for all being here. I want to call out Richard Polk specifically. Richard's working with Lisa and I on our capital campaign, and we're really appreciative of his deep thinking in this on this subject. So thank you so much, and I'll turn it back to you, Lisa.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to introduce Matt Lehrman. He's the Energy Strategy Coordinator for the City of Boulder. And he'll give us an overview of what the climate situation is and the goals that the City of Boulder and the state have. So Matt?
Thank you, Lisa, and Frank, and it's great to be here. I think I also have only 3 minutes, so I won't try to take up too much time, but I was hoping to provide a little bit of context for the rest of the discussion tonight. So the city's climate commitment was adopted by council in 2015 and targets 15%. Ooh, I don't know that I'm controlling the slides.
I am.
It just occurred to me. Oh, that works. Yes. Okay. So as I was saying, the city's climate commitment adopted in 2015 targets 15% emissions reduction across all sectors by 2020 and 80% by 2050, measured against a 2005 baseline. If you look into the right corner of the slide, I'm pleased to report that as of 2019, the city had already achieved that near-term goal, 21% emissions reduction as of the end of 2019 versus that 2005 baseline. So the trend is going in the right direction. At the same time, total emissions in 2019 were still about 1.4 million metric tons. And we're looking at a 2050 scenario that sees about 370,000 metric tons. So we have our work cut out for us, but it's certainly an achievable goal, and I think we are putting the pieces in place right now to do that. And when you break it out, for the purposes of our conversation tonight, when you break that out even more, you can see on the bottom right there that transportation fuels accounted in 2019 for about 29% of the community's emissions. So this is an area where we have a lot of different opportunities, particularly with electrification and other forms of zero emission mobility, to really make some good progress towards our goals. The next slide, please. Similar to the city's goal, the state of Colorado has also adopted aggressive targets for greenhouse gas emissions reduction across all sectors. An interesting distinction between where the city is at and where the state is at is that where in the city, electricity is the #1 source of emissions. As of 2020, or as of the end of 2019, statewide, transportation became the #1 source of emissions. And there's a variety of different, I think, structural reasons for that, Boulder being a very densely compact city versus Colorado, which has many different types of urban, rural areas. But nevertheless, it means that transportation is an area that we have a lot of opportunities for emissions reductions. The emissions reduction targets laid out in the roadmap and signed by Governor Polis are similar: 26% reduction by 2025, 50% by 2030, 90% by 2050, also against a 2005 baseline. And within that roadmap, there's a significant focus not only on transportation planning, but that planning that has a heavy emphasis on equity, on public health, and on the resilience benefits for our residents and businesses. So I think there's a lot of great alignment between what the city is trying to do and what is laid out in the state roadmap. The final slide that I had, please. And I always like to include this, and you may have seen this in other city presentations. This was put together by a colleague of mine, but it's sometimes hard to think about emissions reduction in context, like what does 1.5 degrees Celsius mean? What does 2 degrees mean? And so forth. But at a very high level, when you think about the average temperature, if the average temperature in Boulder increased by 2 degrees Fahrenheit per year, not per year, sorry, on average 2 degrees Fahrenheit, our climate would be more like Pueblo. At 6 degrees, which is what some climate models show, it's more like Albuquerque. This is not a knock on the climates of both those communities. I've spent a lot of time in both of them. They're great. But you can imagine the ecosystem, the water, the trees, the wildlife, but also even just the design and build buildings in our homes in Boulder would be meaningfully different. And so it's something to take into account as we think about some of the emissions reduction strategies that we consider today. Thank you, and I will turn it back to Lisa, back to Frank for your next discussion.
Thank you, Matt. So next up, we've got Danny O'Connor, and after he'll talk about what the city of Boulder is doing. And after Danny will be Landon Hilliard, and he'll talk about BVS, the Boulder Valley School District, followed by Tim Golden from CU Boulder. So Danny, here's your first slide.
Awesome. Hey, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, everyone. Just it's a pleasure to be here, and we just really appreciate everyone coming together to be part of this conversation. Lots of exciting things, really in the works. And as Matt has laid out, just really the climate protection, the climate initiatives are such a key strategy, very important at the city. And when it comes to the transit program, we're housed within the Transportation Mobility Department at the city. We work with all sorts of initiatives and strategies as far as how to actualize this in the community. So really what I'm going to talk a little bit about is the HOP service that operates in Boulder. Many of you may be familiar with it. This is service that we partner with VIA to operate. It's just a very, very well received and just an integral part of the community and the efforts that we have been working towards just in partnership to advance electrification of the HOP fleet here in Boulder. Next slide, please, if you don't mind. For those of you who, and I might have a delay, but for those of you who aren't familiar with the HOP has been operating within the community since 1994. It provides a 5.5 mile circulator, really frequent service that operates. And when you think about the key origins, destinations, just activity centers within Boulder, it connects all of them. We're talking downtown Pearl Street, the downtown transit station with multiple connections to all sorts of RTD, both local and regional routes, direct connection to CU, 29th Street Mall. And what's made it such a success throughout the years is that basically the service is complementary, fits in with the rest of the RTD regional network, but it's also funded in partnership between the city, RTD, CU, to operate it every year. So very successful. And that partnership model has really helped us not only sustain and continue to operate this service, but enhance it and move it towards a fleet with electrification. In 2019, just to give you kind of some perspective, the route carried an average of 2,200 riders per day. Very significant ridership, and typically, pre-COVID and when CU's in session, it's not uncommon to have over 3,000 riders a day on the HOP. You can go to the next slide, please.
I think there might be a delay, but
there might be a delay, but that's okay. I'll keep talking. So similar to the initiatives with climate initiatives department, the Transportation Mobility Department has also found ways in our most recent 2019 Transportation Master Plan to further advance transit and really look for these partnership and opportunities to electrify the HOP fleet. These are some of the key strategies that if you go through our 2019 TMP, everything from expanding the role as a local transit provider in partnership with VIA. We have plans to expand the HOP service when conditions are allow. And we're also looking to basically electrify the entire fleet. And then our partners here on the panel, a shared strategy is also to look for those opportunities where we can share charging infrastructure, perhaps in the community, and also support each other as we advance towards grant asks to invest in all of these capital improvements. Next slide, please. I think just for context, and this is really kind of getting down to the nuts and bolts as far as the fleet and what's on the street. You know, currently VIA has a fleet of 15 buses dedicated to the hop. 14 of them are diesel. One of them is a diesel that's been converted to electric. Really through this new initiative, where we are today is that 3 Proterra electric buses have just been delivered, really made possible by all sorts of grant and partnership funding from the Federal Transit Administration, CDOT, RTD, VIA, and the city. You know, they're here they're here at VIA. We're getting them ready, you know, to launch into service. Just an exciting piece. And you know, and we continue to make this as an active strategy to pursue grant funding and other opportunities to fund more of the fleet. When we look at that fleet of 15, there's about 7 of those buses have reached their useful life. They have lots of miles. They're old. They're eligible for replacement. And you know, to date, we have additional funding really through our partners at FTA and CDOT for more. As of last week, we actually applied for additional through another federal program. So you know, just this is a very active pursuit, something that we're strategically pursuing, additional funding, really trying to advance you know, the electrification of the fleet as quickly and feasible as possible. Next slide, please. And I think, you know, really, as this sets up, as mentioned, the 3 new buses that have been delivered, very exciting. This is a picture of one of them out on a test run. That's 9th and Walnut. But to give you just for those of you who like the specs of a vehicle, this is a Proterra Catalyst 35-foot E2 ProDrive 2020 model. These things have a range of 227 miles, which is excellent. I mean, that's almost double what a typical hop bus does out in service on a day. You know, it features a 22.2 mile per gallon equivalent. That's the electric to diesel basically equivalency. Diesels right now are running anywhere between 3 to 5 miles per gallon. So you can really see kind of the efficiencies that we're getting with this. 27 seats. It's a little bit larger than what the current hop is. And, you know, just really, you know, a vehicle that was built really with the forefront of electric bus technology. Proterra is an American company. This is all by America. You know, just very excited to have these 3 here in Boulder and ready to introduce to service. So next slide, please. And I guess what I would really kind of close by is, you know, these are the status, the steps. This is an active pursuit to continue, you know, 3 are here. What more, you know, how can we get additional ones? There's favorable conditions just at the national and state level as far as some grant opportunities, interest in electrification, how this is all becoming very a featured discussion and priority. You know, we do have a shared goal to have the full fleet electrified by 2030. And, you know, as mentioned, and really with our partners here on the call, any chances that we can do to, one, partner in shared charging infrastructure. Electrification has all sorts of capital components. It requires quite a bit of investment. And 2, you know, the unique piece of it's not just city via BV, but we have all of our transportation partners in the community, as you'll hear from further, who are actively working towards this, and as we support each other's efforts going forward. You know, the opportunity of these buses too, and the electric hop, it gives a visible presence. Here are the vehicles. They're out, they're working very well, and we just really hope that inspires more, and you know, just continued advancement towards our climate commitment, as Matt indicated, and attract more riders and increase SLV within the community. With that, Lisa, I think I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. I'd just like to note for some in our audience who may not be aware of this, that 27% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the United States come from transportation. So you know, emissions from transportation have a huge impact on the atmosphere and the environment. So it's by having these joint efforts, we really can begin to make a difference. But with that, I will, and thanks so much, Danny. I'm going to turn it over to Landon Hilliard, who is the Safe Route co-coordinator for the Boulder Valley School District.
Hello, everyone. Happy Earth Day. First, let me thank Bill Patterson and Frank Bruno with Via Mobility for hosting us, and many thanks to Lisa Curtis for coordinating this. Lisa's talked about the fact that we're bigger and stronger and more effective as a partnership. So to take off where Danny's theme of partnership, it's this web seminar itself is an example of that. So I'm happy to be here, and thank you for everyone for being here. Next slide, please. I'm going to give an overview, high level, peek into what we're doing, what we're up to in the Boulder Valley School District. And I know most of us are locals, but many have not thought possibly that the Boulder Valley School District stretches 5,000 square miles across 9 municipalities. And we have about 60 sites, of which 29 have photovoltaic systems. Each day, we transport about 6,000 children pre-COVID on with our 255-foot bus fleet. Of that bus fleet, we're moving towards alt fuels, and you can see that we have 36 propane, and we have one shining star that's electric. That represents 0.5 of our total fleet, but still important. So the takeaways about our school district is that we're spread far and wide. We have a large audience of students and staff. If you add our population of parents, it's up to 50,000, 60,000 people. So we can have an effect as one institution and a greater effect with our partners. I mentioned on this slide the bond. The bond financing has been key for the school district to retrofit and make our buildings more efficient and actually build 4 new school buildings. In addition to that, it's allowed us to install electric vehicle charging infrastructure at nearly all our sites. So of 60 sites, we have 51 or 85% that have at least one charging station. Next slide, please, Lisa. The next slide has to do with sustainability. For almost more than a decade now, the district has pursued sustainable activities and policy. And of the 4 elements in the school district's sustainability energy plan, transportation is an important part of that. So we're ambitious, and we're can only get better. The 3 main thrusts of our sustainability is to look at fleet emissions and, of course, reduce greenhouse gases. Part of that will be to think about the composition of our fleet, which again is mostly diesel at this time, but moving towards more alternative fuel vehicles, propane, and electric. And we're in a place now where we have an aging fleet. maybe a fleet that in some sense, in some ways is coming to the end of its service, or many of the buses. And so we're looking to find capital or make capital investments to have a faster replacement and move to the alt fuels vehicles. Okay, next slide, please. Next and last slide. So this is our beautiful new shining bus. Note the ornament on the hood for its arrival. And my colleague, Amy Thompson, who made some fanfare when we introduced or debuted this bus in March. So thinking, well, actually about the bus itself, especially for the motorheads, it has a 120-mile range, as you can see. And I'm comparing the horsepower at maximum torque to the Proterra. And it occurred to me that the Proterra outpaces the horsepower by a little bit. So in a drag race, I don't know, you'd have to flip the coin, but I'd be curious to know who would win that. But these are statistics. And one thing that our fleet manager, Kevin Cole, talks about is, if you look at this bus, there's nothing that reveals the fact that it is powered by electricity. If you looked on the side, there'd be a little emblem from Bluebird that's green. Because it's kind of incognito, we want to bring attention to the fact that we're running an electric bus. So we'll be working with a branding firm to wrap it or partially wrap it to the extent that we can and show it off. It's running regular routes today of about 40 to 50 miles flatland, and we're putting it through its paces to see how it really goes. Long term, as you can see these percentages, this is what the school district would like to achieve. Notice that there's still diesel and gasoline in that mix because of some of the limitations of electricity and for propane infrastructure deficiencies around fueling. We believe we'll still need diesel and gas in about a 10-year horizon, but we're moving more towards propane. And if we really played our cards right, we would achieve about half of our buses could be electric. That'd be viable. I just want to finish by again mentioning our partners. Boulder County is not on the call today, but is a big part of our sustainability efforts and electrification of the transportation element. Of course, the city of Boulder should earn plaudits for its aggressiveness and support, and then VIA and CU Boulder, as well as Microgrid Labs and National Car Charging. We have a lot that we can do together, and it's an exciting time, as you know, to be where we are with transportation and see where it's going. So with that, I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Thank you, Landon. So next up is Tim Golden from CU Boulder. He's the Director of Transportation and Distribution Services at the university. So Tim, take it away.
Okay, all right, Lisa, thank you. Well, I'll echo everybody else. It's a privilege to be here today and to represent CU in this seminar. If you haven't picked up on it by now, there's a lot of collaboration between all these various groups. In fact, we have regular meetings where we talk about electrification of our fleet. So just so you know, this is something that we really are working on together, trying to move forward together as much as possible with the electrification. So our first slide here it shows our campus shuttle service. We do call it a shuttle because basically we're just shuttling students and faculty and staff around the campus. We affectionately call it the Buff Bus service. That's kind of our nickname for it. And if you look at the map, there's basically 3 routes. The route that sort of looks like purplish pink, that's our busiest route. It runs between, on the bottom of the slide there, that's our Williams Village, Bear Creek student housing areas. And it runs between there and the main campus. It averages about 12,000 rides a day during the school year. The second route, the second in capacity and usefulness and use, is the one that's in, I think that's either navy blue or black, but anyway, it runs between the main campus and the east campus. That's a Stampede route. We took that route over from RTD. and that averages about 3,000 rides a day. Then the green route is what we call our Marine Street Express. Over on Marine Street, we have some office complexes there, and there's a lot of staff that work over there that have to get back and forth to the main campus. And so that route runs them back and forth. And also, if you notice up to the top of the slide, it runs over to a building off of 33rd. That area we call it the Sync Building. They do research, and they have some classrooms there, and some students need to get out there with projects and back and forth, and so it helps them with that. Not a ton of ridership compared to the others, but certainly key for getting our students and staff and faculty around to those specialized areas. We also do charters with our buses. Mostly this is during the summer when the school is not in session, or during the winter break, also when school is in session. And this will be on behalf of some of the academic departments. There's some student clubs, and we even do some private charters that we use our buses for. I'd like to mention just a few things about our buses. Our buses don't have a card tap system, so you can ride our bus for free, and anybody can ride them. That allows for us to get our passengers on and off much quicker that way. We have these surge periods too. You know, it says 12,000 rides to date on the Williams Village Bear Creek Run, but it'd be great if that was spread out over the day, but it's not. Whenever there's a class change, the buses are just slammed full of people. In fact, it'll be standing room only. And so we'll just cram as many people as we can get on, because those students are trying to get to the next class very quickly. So we have a lot of challenge with that of those surge periods. Also, we have to have multiple doors on our buses for the same reason. We have to get the passengers on and off very quickly. And then when we look at configuration of new buses, we have to think about what's the way to get the maximum amount of riders on that bus, a combination of seats and standing room. Now, if you look at our fleet, we have 27 buses right now. We have 12 60-foot, what we call articulated buses. They flex in the middle. We have 9 40-foot buses, 4 30-foot buses, and 2 what we call cutaways that are shorter buses that are a little more specialized to get around in a little tighter areas. We mainly use those cutaways on the Marine Street Express during class periods. And you might ask, well, why do we have all these different sizes? Well, with these surges, we really need those 60-foot buses. That's why we have the most of those, because it's during those surges that we have to move a lot of people. So that's why we have 12 of those. Now, the problem with those buses, though, is that they don't do well in ice and snow. So when we have a bad weather day, we have to basically park those and go to our other buses. Also, our other buses, our 40s and our 30s, are used a lot for charters. You can imagine a 60-foot bus that can hold upwards of 120 people with standing room. You don't have many charters that would have that much need. And also, those buses don't turn around very easily. And a lot of our charters are to parks or up to the mountains, maybe to the mountain research station, somewhere like that, where turning around, it can be very challenging. And so we also have the shorter buses for that. I noticed that Landon talked about the age of their buses. We have the same challenge. The average age of our bus fleet is 16 years. Well, if the average is 16, it tells you a lot of them are much older than that. So it is a challenge that we deal with, trying to refresh that fleet. There's financial challenges that go along with that, but we're doing our best to work on it as quickly as we can. And we'll get into that a little more on our next slide, Lisa, if you bring that up for us. So here on the left, we have some pictures of our buses. And if you've not seen a 60-foot articulated bus, that's one there on the bottom. You can see the flex area in the middle that allows it to make turns and so forth. Now, as far as goals, CU Boulder lines up with the American College and University President's climate commitment. And what that is, it's a commitment to have 50% greenhouse gas reductions by 2030 and 80% by 2050. Notice there's a footnote that says these goals are under review. Camp is striving to be 100% carbon free by 2050. Well, just today, Boulder had its Campus Sustainability Summit, and Chancellor Philip DeStefano spoke there. He gave a discourse entitled "A Call to Climate Action." And during that discourse, he made this commitment. He said that CU Boulder is committed to updating the campus climate action plan in 2021 to 2022 with a goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. So that's just came out today. And if you'd like to read what he had to say, you can go to the CU Boulder Chancellor website, and it's got his discourse in there word for word related to to his call to climate action. Now, when it comes to electric buses, we don't have any yet on the campus, but we're in the plans of getting 4 40-foot electric battery buses. We're going to work on doing that in the next 5 years. Now, our first 2 buses, we're actually in the process right now of speccing those with a manufacturer, and they'll be on the campus by the fall of 2022 next year. And we purchased those with the help of a cost share grant with the Environmental Protection Agency under their Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, that grant program. And so that allowed us to get started down the path of electric. Now, you notice another footnote. It says we're not planning to purchase any new diesel buses. We're committed to the transition to electric. So that is our goal, and we are working towards that. So in the next 5 years, we hope to have those 4 buses, and then we'll proceed from there. Certainly there, as the other panelists know, and they have mentioned, I think, that there is a challenge when it comes to the cost of electric buses. For example, a 60-foot articulated bus can have a cost premium that is the difference between diesel and electric of up to 60%. That's huge. And a 40-foot bus can be even more. It can be up to a 70% cost premium. So those are challenges that make it difficult. That's, to move forward as quickly as you would like. We also, on the campus, we have a problem, an additional issue in that our buses don't gain a lot of mileage. Our routes are only about 2 miles long. So the buses don't put on a lot of mileage, and they're only running about 9 months out of the year every day. And then those charters that I mentioned. So what that does, it has a negative impact on our life cycle cost comparisons. It makes it challenging to say that it's a cost benefit. It really isn't for us to go electric. So that's a challenge that we have to deal with, but we continue to look for opportunities. For example, we feel like that as more buses are manufactured and put on the road, that should bring the costs down. And that'll help all of us to be able to electrify a little more quickly. And of course, we're always looking for those financial opportunity helps like grants to see what we can do there to speed up our move toward electrification. Now, the last point under challenges is kind of an interesting one. Our current maintenance facility on campus, it's inadequate to support electric buses. Now, what do you mean by that? Well, electric buses, the batteries are on the bottom. So if you're going to work on those, you've got to get them up in the air, and our shop is not tall enough. It's not what it was designed for. So we've got to work out that issue too, but we're working on it. We've got some things in mind that we're going to look at. And even though we have these challenges, just like the other entities have mentioned, we're committed at CU Boulder to electrification. We're going to continue to explore any and all options we can to speed things up, to get there quicker. And we're looking at whatever we can do to help our recapitalization plan and overcome these challenges that I just mentioned. So Lisa, I'll turn it back over to you now.
Thanks, Tim. So we've heard from fleet managers about from the city and Boulder Valley School District and CU. And now we're going to hear from Bill Patterson from VIA, who's our Chief Financial Officer, and Namit Singh, who is co-founder of Microgrid Labs and who is leading up our VIA's Microgrid project. So along with, electrifying the fleet of diesel buses comes the task of how you're going to charge those buses. So it's a little bit more complicated problem than I think a lot of people realize. So I will turn it over now to Bill and Namit to talk about VIA's infrastructure project, its microgrid project, and our plans for getting our fleets that we manage, our public transit fleet and our paratransit fleets, to net zero transit, which I'll let them explain the details. Bill, do you want to go first, or do you want Namit to go first?
No,
Thank you, Lisa. And thank you to all the other partners that are on this call. As Tim and Landon indicated, we have been really talking for a couple of years about how we're going to achieve this electrification of transit within the city of Boulder, and for via even the wider area of Boulder County and the metro area. Lisa, could you go to the first slide, please? For us, we need to look at a couple of things. The first thing being our vehicle fleet. Danny's already talked about our 15 hop buses, which are now going to 17. And on the left, you see one of our 30-foot diesels and our new 35-foot electrics. We have goals to really electrify that whole fleet by 2030, as Danny has said. But in addition to that, we have about 100 cutaways and vans. And these are just a couple of the cutaways, all of which are gasoline, diesel, or CNG, compressed natural gas right now. We do have our first grant for an electric cutaway, and we're looking forward to getting that either late this year or early in 2022. And we're really the first agency in the state to get a grant for an electric cutaway. So being the guinea pig, we will choose what we would like to see and be an example for the state and be able to feed back to other agencies. And we also have a fleet of autos. So that's more conducive to electrification early on. We do have just one of those vehicles is electric, a Nissan Leaf. To get to electrifying the fleet, it not only takes buying the vehicles, which for us, the Proterras were about double the price of that bus on the left. And it's very similar on the cutaways. It may even be more than twice as much money for an electric cutaway right now, or a Ford Transit van. But it also takes charging infrastructure. And that's important. That's almost equally expensive. For the 3 buses we've just received and the charging infrastructure combined, we're talking about $3 million. And that's for 3 buses. So, it is quite a bit to bite off and chew. Over time, the operating costs of the electric should be less, but we're not convinced it's a less expensive technology right now. It's just a technology we need to go to for the climate. So we are going there, and we don't plan on buying any more diesel buses. Our fleet is about 1.1 million in miles traveled per year, and we take over 1 million passengers. So it is a substantial amount, and converting that other fleet will be quite a challenge for us. Next slide, please. The other half of the equation is our building, not only for charging structure, but for the power for the building itself. Our building is 10 years old. It's a beautiful facility if you've ever been here. And you can see the view we have out of the back of the building. It's quite amazing. We use about 80 kilowatts on average to run our building. You can see the rooftop solar we have, which is about 100 kilowatt array, but that really only covers about 20 to 25% of our power needs for the building. And we have a small nano grid, as we call it, which in that bottom middle slide there, that runs our IT computers by DC power. And then we have a pretty, environmentally friendly building. It's pretty new. We have lots of natural light. We don't need a lot of lighting. We have really good systems, tight, insulated building. But still, it's a power use, and we need it to operate our business. Danny talked a little bit about the funding. Typically on our vehicles, we're able to get federal funding to about 80% of the cost of the vehicles. That's very helpful. We, our partners, RTD, the city of Boulder, come up with the matching grants. Now that's been the traditional model. We're finding on electric vehicles, we're having to match up to 50% of the cost of a bus. So the funding is going to be difficult. The same amount of funding that the federal government's used to providing is only going to buy half as many buses in the future unless it's increased. So we think of that as, you know, a potential limit to us to get buses, at least with our traditional funding models. We're thinking of other things. We're thinking of other ways. When it comes to charging, though, we still have to get our power off the grant. And I'm going to turn this over to Namit in a moment. What VIA would like to do is find a way to charge our buses with renewable energy. And hence we received yet another grant from the federal government for planning. And this plan is to put a microgrid into our facility that will help us to charge our vehicles and our building with renewable energy. So we have hired Microgrid Labs to do this work for us. And I'm going to turn it over to Namit Singh to continue with this portion.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks everyone. Absolutely excited to be part of this this project, and really looking forward to helping everyone achieve the goal that we've been talking about here. So let's first look at the building itself. So the building in today's date, VIA gets its electricity from Xcel Energy. So the emission numbers that are associated with that are dependent on what the energy mix is. Lisa, next one, please. So the energy mix is what determines that what is the overall emission numbers coming in from Xcel, and hence for VIA. So as we know here, Xcel is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, so natural gas, coal, wind, a little bit of solar, and a little bit of hydro. What this means is that all of these put together, Lisa, next one, please. All of this put together, we have an emission number associated with every kilowatt hour that any facility in Boulder buys or in Colorado buys from Xcel. And that is what translates to what exactly is the emission number for all the electricity that we get from Xcel. So here in this case, Xcel has a goal of 100% carbon free by 2050. But VIA as a facility and other facilities can expedite it and go faster. So here what we are talking about is this contributes to about 360 metric ton of CO2 just for electricity, just for building. So the plan here for VIA is that in today's date, it is coming, if it is coming 100% from Xcel, then it has a certain emission number associated with it. As of today, VIA has about 100 kilowatt solar system installed. So that offsets close to 20 to 22% of electricity, and that means the emission. And the goal moving forward is to flip it the other way around and have 100% self-generation coming in from solar. And that is what will help VIA achieve the goal of 100% net zero electricity for the building by 2024. Then next, let's look at the transportation. That is the other major part of VIA's operations. So as Bill mentioned earlier, operate about close to 135 vehicles and about 1.1 million miles traveled. Out of this, if we look at the emission numbers only from the heavy duty fleet, which is hop buses here, that is about 1,000 metric tons. And for the rest of the fleet combined, it is about 1,200. So the approach here is that have goal for the heavy duty fleet, because again, for all the discussions that this is more polluting and at the same time, this is these vehicles are available right now. So get to 25% of the fleet, zero emission 2021, that is where we are today. So there are 4 buses. Moving forward, get to 50% by 23 and 100% by 2030. And the same kind of approach for other sets of vehicles, that 25% by 2025 and 75% by 2030, and absolutely no emitting vehicles after that. So after 2030, all the purchases will be zero emissions. So now the question is, Lisa, next slide, please. the question is where are we today and what has been achieved and what are the next steps. So in the last decade, ever since the building was done, the building is built with sustainability in mind. There is a close to 100 kilowatt system that is already installed. Now moving forward, where we are, so in 2018, the next step was to electrify one bus and operate it, and at the same time implement on-site microgrid specifically for critical loads within the building. So that can be termed as nanogrid as well. So where we are today is we are doing a very detailed analysis for fleet electrification planning and microgrid. And VIA has procured 3 more electric buses. So that adds up to 4 fleet vehicles at this point in time. So moving forward from here, the next step is what is the phase 2, where at this point in time, we have solar here. You can see 100 kilowatt solar, another 10 kilowatt, which is on the next roof, which is connected to the microgrid or the nanogrid. And there are 4 buses which are existing. The next step from there is to get the building to net zero electricity. And for that, we are looking at about 375 kilowatt, adding more that capacity of solar, and that can be achieved by covering rest of the roof, and at the same time adding carport solar, which also covers the existing buses and allows that to happen. And also get the fleet to 50% electric, so getting to 8 electric buses. And then moving, that's okay. That's okay. You can go to the next one. Yeah. Then the next phase is from 2025 to 2030. And that is where the HOP electric fleet will be 100%. And rest of the fleet will be 75% zero emission. And that is what we can achieve by covering the complete parking lot. There is plenty of open space available. So creating carport solar over it so that the vehicles are electrified, and now you are able to generate enough electricity to power them locally. This won't be able to support 100%, but this supports about 14 to 15 of HOP fleet can be completely powered by this solar. So that is the plan. These are the steps. We are not getting into technical today, but feel free to reach out if you have any questions on the technical side of things.
Thanks, Namit.
Next, one more click, Lisa, and you can leave it there. So just some rendering.
Is there a delay?
Oh, perfect. Okay. So back to you, Lisa. Thank you again, everyone. Looking forward to really supporting and getting this going.
Thank you. Namit, that was really great. I love these drawings. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and we'll go to some of the questions that we have. And let me pull that up. Let's see, 1 second. So I'm going to start, I just want to remind people that you can still ask more questions, and I'm going to start to go through what we've got right now. Facebook watchers can also can comment, add their questions to the comment feature in Facebook. So the first question, where do VIA's grants come from? And this is in response to Bill talking about how we got our first grant for the electric cutaway. Bill, you want to handle that one?
Sure. So VIA being a transportation agency, we are able to receive grants, federal grants through the Colorado Department of Transportation. Most of those grants come through the Federal Transit Administration, the FTA, part of the Department of Transportation. And they do provide transit grants really all over the country. It's not only for vehicles, but also much of our operation in our paratransit is funded through the FTA. The state has some funding as well. They call it FASTER. They have another group of funding called Senate Bill 228. And there is also some funding which we receive for our electric cutaway for part of the vehicle, and Danny is receiving for the next 4 hot buses, is provided by the Volkswagen settlement money. If you're familiar with that, Volkswagen paid a huge amount of billions in settlement money to the federal government, which was then split out to the states, and Colorado got its portion, and a portion of that is dedicated to transit. The way they're doing that is maybe there's a different grant that funds, let's say, the base cost of a diesel vehicle or a gasoline vehicle, and then the Volkswagen settlement money will fund the difference. So that is allowing us to, it's an interesting funding model that's allowing us to electrify by using just the base grant cost of what it would have cost to buy an internal combustion engine. So unfortunately, that Volkswagen money will run out here in probably another year, and what will be the next source? We don't know.
Thanks, Bill. This is a question for Namit. What is a microgrid?
That is a good question. So microgrid is, by definition, any place where you have local generation which supports the consumption of electricity, and that whole infrastructure can be either connected to the grid, in this case Excel, or in case of outage on Excel side, it can still operate without it. So that is called the islanded mode. So the other option is that you can have intentional islanded, that if you have, you still have the option of being connected to the grid and be able to connect to the grid, but at the same time, you have your own generation, your own storage, everything put together, so that you are self-sufficient. That is the 100% microgrid, but everything in between. So you have a little bit of generation, little bit of storage, but at the same time, it can be grid connected or completely islanded. So in this case, we are talking about grid connected.
Thank you. So we've got another question. Who or what provides the most current information about current and future fast charging infrastructure to support drivers, commuters, fleets? As mentioned in one of the answers that somebody's already given. Who wants to take
I can take that one. I'm actually gonna put a few resources right into the chat. It'll probably be the easiest way to do that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Matt. How much solar is this final step for 2025 through 2030? This was a question in response to the microgrid discussion. That's
Sorry, was the question how much? What is the capacity?
yes, for the 20
For the last year, yeah.
For 2025 through the 2030 time period.
Yeah, so that is restricted by the space available here. So even though as more vehicles electrify, we would need more, but restricted by the space that is available. So having said that, we are looking at somewhere between 1.75 to 2 megawatt of total carport solar that can be put here. And that would be able to offset, get the building to net zero and get about somewhere between 12 to 15 hop buses to net zero. But that is when we run at the maximum as far as the space is concerned. So that does not include any other vehicles being electrified.
Okay. And here's another question for Namit as well. How much PV capacity is required for phase 3 of the VIA microgrid?
Yeah, so again, restricted by the space that is available, and the maximum that we can go is somewhere close to 2 megawatt.
And this is a question for Bill, the money guy. Are you considering non-grant financing for the microgrid?
We are. We're kicking off a major fundraising initiative. Actually, Lisa is leading that. There you go, Lisa. And and Frank. And so I think it will be a combination. It's going to take a combination of resources to do this project. It will take some grant funding. It will take some private donations, and it may require other types of funding as well. So we are looking at a number of options there.
That's all true. And it will take a combination of funding. It will be an opportunity for people who are contributing to the project to leverage federal grant dollars as well, because I anticipate that we'll see quite a few new grant opportunities coming soon related to electrification of the fleets and new transportation dollars. So it's an exciting time. So questions about the hot buses. Do the buses have supplementary propane heating for winter? This is a very good question. Heating really kills range. Who wants to take that one, Bill?
I could take it. Indeed, it does. We did have an option to put diesel heaters, excuse me, on the roof, and we did not do that. We did not, we want to go at least tailpipe and bus greenhouse gas free. So our buses will be out there not generating greenhouse gases. It's only, how do we charge them? So it's electric heat, and that will reduce the range. There's no doubt about that. We sized our batteries on the buses to manage that. We talked to a lot of different agencies when we were looking at these buses, and amazingly, everybody knows that California is way ahead of all of us on electrifying. And of course, it's the land of perfect weather. But we did talk to an agency in Duluth, and talk about harsh winters, and they're doing okay with their electric heat. So it's a way to just keep the greenhouse gases, let's work on our power grid next.
Sorry, I can't resist. But California can't balance the budget, which is, so I think we're a little bit ahead of them there.
So the next question is about the hot buses as well. Are the hot buses that are being procured V to G capable, as well as for grid backup and resiliency? I think I know who asked that question. But.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Potentially it could be, but the way you would do that is it would come backwards through the chargers. The chargers we have, like let's say we just wanted to use it as a battery for our own building. Our chargers are not capable of that. The next generation of chargers may well be capable of that. But let's say we wanted to take our bus over to the hospital because the hospital's power's out. You would have to build some infrastructure at the hospital to be able to make that happen. Or at any other building that you wanted to power. So it's an interesting idea, and it is an idea about resilience in your community. But even when you get your bus there, you're only going to be talking about, in our case, 440 kilowatts of power on a building you could use up really quickly. So it's a pretty cool idea, though.
Another question about the hot buses. How was the acquisition process for the Proterra buses? How has the ongoing experience been? Is there anything you wish you had known before we started down that road? Actually, we started with another company, so it was a complicated road.
Yeah, I guess I could take that one too.
Yeah.
We were lucky in that we did that diesel to battery conversion on our oldest 2004 Hop diesel, and made it an all-electric bus with our partners Lightning Systems in Loveland. And we've learned a lot from that. We've talked to a lot of agencies about electrifying their fleets. It's a way different thing than running a diesel fleet. And we're still learning a lot. But, is there anything we wouldn't have done? Ask me that in about 6 months.
Let's see. This is a question about Excel. would VIA consider entering into a power purchase agreement with a third-party financer for the microgrid? Not a question about Excel. Frank, you want to answer that one?
Well, yeah, I'll take a crack at the non-technical part of that and just say that I think we would. You know, I think several options really do need to be on the table for us, and I think that's one of the reasons we're doing this evening, is to make sure that we are talking with one another and aware of what options there are, not just in Boulder or Colorado, and, you know, all kidding aside, you know, jabbing at California and budget issues, but we really do have opportunities to learn from others. And I do think that the reality is, as you've all said, just buying one electric bus as compared to what we used to be able to do with diesel is really, you know, brings us all up kind of short, and realizes that we're trying to find out pennies and say, well, you know, can we throw a few more thousand in? I really do think we're going to need that third party type of situation in order to advance our progress on electrification. And I also think it's really important that we leave room on the table for, you know, hydrogen and whatever else may come. But I think hydrogen is most likely to come next, that we want to leave room for that. But in the meantime, I do think we're going to need to look at some ability to provide some return to an investor, however we can do that. But look at the opportunity to advance this without simply relying on government money, because I just think that's going to be, you know, we all kind of smiled at how long it took us to get these 3 buses here. And that's one of the reasons why we did do the conversion of HOP 15 on our own with Lightning. We just wanted to be out of the gate with an electric vehicle and did not want to wait. But I think that if we want to achieve the goals we've set, we're going to have to look at those options. So it's maybe a little bit of a political answer, but I think that's what it's going to take.
And Lisa, may I toss in just a word about financing, at least for the school bus sector?
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
So as we know, at the legislative level, state level, through the Colorado Energy Office, there's a great deal of money being given towards electrification. For school buses, thanks to the Regional Air Quality Council and a grant called Alt Fuels Colorado, at this time, if I have it right, the incremental cost difference between a regular diesel school bus, which goes for around $115,000, and a first, second generation electric school bus, which goes for around $350,000, so maybe 3 times premium. There's 118%, how do you say this? Coverage of the cost differential. In other words, it may be possible to acquire a electric school bus for slightly less than the retail cost of a diesel bus. I just want to put a good word in for the Regional Air Quality Council as an excellent resource and funding agency that's helped the school district and other school districts electrify.
Great. Thank you. Danny, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to tack on, I mean, you know, I think one of the things that's become apparent even in our grant applications and, you know, just trying to find, you know, what are the different avenues that we have that we can do this, is it's been so important as, you know, each partner has a climate commitment. You know, we have a state plan, we have plans that we can refer to that have been adopted by policy at the different, you know, basically at the different levels within each. And then we're also a community where we have all the partners working together towards this, which really puts, when we're making these asks, whether it's in a grant application, you know, that has federal or state or what have you, it really tells a really compelling narrative. You have the city, the operator, the major university, the flagship of the state, plus, you know, the school district, all working and talking together, and really the possibility of that. And, you know, it is something right now. I mean, when we talk to other communities, it's unique within Colorado as far as the synergy, you know, what we have here. And, you know, it's that good work, and where things are, you know, we have climate plans, we have TMPs that have this all codified, we have things that we can point to that are the documents, plus, you know, the money is being committed. You know, this is large, you know, this is a large capital jump. You know, the buses are double, you have the cost of electrification. It's really trying to embrace a new technology, but, you know, the commitment's there, and, you know, having all of that is really, you know, from what I've seen and just talking to our partners, been very strategic, and I think really helpful as far as pushing the ball and getting the vehicles to begin showing up in the community. And then, you know, as we've mentioned, we have more in the pipeline with other grants. So
there's a related question from someone, one of the attendees. Is there any conversation within the group here about a joint electrification plan to allow for minimizing the charging infrastructure investment? So maybe Tim or somebody else. Tim, you want to start off with that one?
There has been a lot of discussion about that. I couldn't, you know, we haven't landed on a solution, but we certainly are all talking to each other. For example, the hot buses, they come onto the campus. So if they could charge on the campus, wouldn't that be a nice thing? That would certainly help them out as far as any challenges with range. And the same with all of us. There's certainly some advantages to doing that. CU is actively looking at what to do in the future. And we've all been talking about, you know, what are the opportunities, that we haven't really landed on anything yet. You know, it takes room, it takes money, of course, and in a strategic location that would work for all the entities involved. So, but yep, we're definitely talking about it.
Thank you. A similar question is there discussion of using the same brands of buses between VIA, CU, and BVSD to allow sharing of charging infrastructure? Anyone want to take that one?
Tim, why don't you go?
Yeah. So VIA and the city set a nice pattern, and when they chose Proterra, we had been talking to them quite a bit already, at least even 2 to 3 years back. And so right now they are the company that CU is speccing buses with right now. So, and we've had conversations with Bill and his team, and with Danny too, about that, and, you know, trying to learn from lessons learned from their experience. And so, yeah, and part of choosing Proterra was for that very reason, so that we could share knowledge, you know, whatever it might be. And also, you know, you think about, you know, manufacturers coming out to do work or whatever, trainings, whatever it might be. Well, certainly we can join forces there too with that. So, and also there's that advantage of, and even with our technicians doing repairs, they can share knowledge, they can help each other out. So we just felt like that was the right thing to do to do that. Bill, you might want to comment on that too yourself there.
No, I agree, you know, as much as we can. Fortunately, the Proterras use a standard type of charging infrastructure or plug, and the way they accept it. And the problem will be, and Laney could probably address this one, but the school buses are kind of different as far as the manufacturers go. So, you know, the manufacturers are not the same for school buses and transit buses, and but that doesn't mean that that the chargers we have could not charge a school bus.
Right. I'll just tack on. There are universal uniformity for the charging plugs for level 3 DC fast charging and for level 2 charging that are acceptable for school bus as well as transit buses. but it's important to keep in mind that a yellow bus is a different animal than a transit bus. The Colorado Department of Education, to protect children inside, puts a standard of specifications on a school bus that's different than transit. There's something called a rack and load test. Essentially, it's that a bus can't be crushed from the top and it can't be T-boned from the side. So it's a rigid frame. And those specifications make it difficult to meet the requirements for some school bus manufacturers. Case in point is a company called E-Line, which is fast out of the gates in California for school buses, but hasn't cracked the regulatory code here in Colorado. But we're hopeful that many more OEMs will come on the market. In a few years, we'll have more choices and the price will come down just through upon economies of scale.
I just, Lisa, if I could, I just wanted to throw in again another little non-technical point about that question, though. One concern I would have about having too many eggs in the one basket is that when they have a software problem that maybe goes beyond a local problem, then all of a sudden we may all be out of business, and talking about more than just Boulder. And we had a situation with ChargePoint where it was a more nationwide issue. So I just would say we need to put that into our thinking, not in any way to turn our back on efficiencies and in learning and sharing, but also just build in that resiliency.
Thank you. We've got a question for Matt. How new and creative is the Department of Climate Initiatives? Did you pattern it on another organization?
That is a good question. I think the Department of Climate Initiatives is really just the evolution of what was once the Department of Planning and Sustainability, which I think separated into a planning side and a sustainability side. I think it was leadership and environmental action prior to that. That definitely predates my time at the city. But it exists now and has for, I think this is our third year now as the Department of Climate Initiatives, and is really just an evolution of the city's work over time.
Thank you. Here's another question. Carport solar combined with storage seems like such a great way to produce, consume, and charge local and minimize further needed grid power. Is the city, CU, BVSD, et cetera, looking to leverage what VIA has planned for carport solar installation? Tim?
I would just say that it's not like the same thing can be used there. It'll be customized design looking at the location and everything. But yeah, over to others to answer the question that are you considering or not.
Yeah, CU is definitely looking into it. They've already identified some lots, some parking lots in areas where they could do that. Early in the discussion phase, but certainly they have a goal of, doing our best to take advantage of solar and the possibilities there, not only for our fleets, but for our buildings as well. In fact, I think maybe you're aware there's a solar farm, I guess you'd say, out next to Foothills that belongs to CU, out there next to some of the buildings. We have a few buildings now with solar on the roof. So we are looking at the solar canopies as well over some of the parking areas.
The city has done that as well. The Generation Solar project that was, I think, announced about a year ago, but it's just gone online, includes one, if not two, solar carports. And then we have other sites that, as I think Tim said, we have solar on site where there is EV charging. Maybe the best, well, we do have that, for example, at North Boulder Rec, but maybe the best example is at the 1500 Pearl parking garage, which has solar on the top, and there's EV charging on the first level. So it's not a direct, EV charging connected straight to the solar, but it's part of the same building load, and it's on the same parking garage.
Great, thank you. So we've got a last question, and it's how can we learn more about VIA's solar project? And I can answer that. I'm going to give us a last slide to let's see, I need to share my screen. So let's see, share screen, here we go. So let me get to the very end there. So I can be the point person for giving you more information about our net zero transit goal. And my contact information is on this last slide here. You can reach me at lcurtis@viacolorado.org or my direct line 303-444-3097. Happy to talk to anybody about what we're up to and our medium and long-term goals with this project. It's an incredibly exciting thing to be able to work on. And by net zero transit, what we mean is that it will ultimately, it will be 100% renewable. We will not be, there will be no carbon involved with our transit operations if once we realize that net zero transit goal. So very exciting things happening. I want to thank all of our panelists today. Great presentations. Anybody who wants the slides can contact me and I'll give you the set of the slides. I'm so grateful for all the participation from our panel. And also I'd like to give a shout out to our communications director, Lindsay Morse, who gathered all the questions for me and behind the scenes so we could answer things in a timely fashion. I really enjoyed this. Our next transit talk will be June 24th. And we'll be talking about the mobility partnership in Boulder and the Denver metro area and how we're trying to create a community-driven, equitable, convenient, and sustainable, environmentally sustainable mobility system that's an alternative to driving a personal car. So thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. And thanks for all our partners. We're doing great things, and this is an exciting time in Boulder and in the Front Range area in general.